it hasn't hit you for that verification thing again.
No. Yeah.
It's usually just a one-time thing.
Okay, so that should be going. So there's some stuff coming up that I want you guys to know about. We talked about letting you all know when community events start to happen, so as to get you involved in sort of the startup and tech community here in Oklahoma City. Well, tomorrow at lunch, whoa, that's JavaScript grammar. Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City JavaScript user group is taking place. This is a massive user group of like 70 to 80 people that regularly shows up for these meetings. It happens at lunch. It will take place at Prototech, which Brent has mentioned before. I don't see Brent here tonight, but Prototech is right next to McNelly's on Classen and 10th or whatever.
It's up the street, actually.
It's up the street. It's very close to it, though, right?
Yeah.
It's just further down on 10th, I think. Is that right?
10th and Hudson.
10th and Hudson, right? So right in that neighborhood. This is where you'll find more information about this happening. So it's at okcjs.com. And Jay Boveri from, I think that's John, who's a startup here in Oklahoma City. Josh, thank you, sorry, is going to talk about Grunt, which is a tool that we might be using, and other task runners. But more importantly, since that will probably be sort of out there at this point, this is getting plugged into what's going on. And there's going to be a ton of people there, and they're all going to hang out and have pizza for lunch and learn about JavaScript. So if you're free and you want some free lunch, this is totally worth going to. These guys do an awesome job with it. Amanda, who I keep talking about as maybe coming here, she's one of the co-founders of this, her and her husband, and they do an awesome job with this. So definitely worth checking out. That's happening tomorrow at 11:30. More information at okcjs.com. And you know, these guys aren't asking me to do this. I'm letting you guys know whatever I hear about that comes up. So the next thing that I just learned about today is Launch Oklahoma, which is a sort of our local startup accelerator. VentureSpur is now in Texas. The Launch Oklahoma is now here. They are having a meet and greet and get together happy hour event on Friday, this Friday, at 5:30 p.m. at the 404. The 404 is the co-working space in Oklahoma City. It is on Sheridan, so it's just a little west of the Devon building. Sheridan and I'm not something. It's just a little further down. It's not quite all the way to Western, but it's in between Western and whatever the other one is. Yeah, Walker. So, but check it out. So this is Venture Accelerator's Launch Oklahoma Place, so launchoklahoma.com, and they might have information about this on here somewhere. It's under the events tab. Great. So we'll do an events listing. And hopefully that will mention that they're doing this thing at the 404, so Final Applications, Entrepreneurial Community Happy Hour. So on Friday from 5:30 to 7. And that will be like a who's who of folks in tech here in the city hanging out and getting to know the people that they might be accepting for their upcoming Startup Accelerator program. And this is a networking event explicitly billed as such, so if you know, companies in the area and brand new companies in the area, they're going to be hanging out there. So. And it's a happy hour, so people will probably be drinking and stuff. It's a good time. It's at the 404. It'll be pretty chill Friday afternoon, or Friday evening, sorry. Somebody suggested that we get together and do another McNelly's night, so we're going to set that up for Wednesday. After class on Wednesday, so from 8 o'clock until whenever people want to leave, we're going to go hang out at McNelly's at Plaza Court, so that's this guy here. And it's not going to be code, class, anything related. We're just going to hang out again.
It's also burger night.
It's burger night on Wednesday? So if you're hungry after class on Wednesday, burger night at McNelly's. So I'll be there, whether anybody else comes or not. I'll get me a Guinness, and we'll hang out. So hang out for a couple hours. So that's coming up. Something that I did last week was office hours. So I want to set up an availability outside of class, open office hours, where and people can just come and we can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about class related. Now we did that, when did we do that? Was Friday? Thursday? So we did it Friday at 10 a.m., which I get probably doesn't work for everybody who has a job. I can really do it anytime. I mean, this is...
You do it online?
I thought about doing it online. I want to do it in person.
Okay.
And so I think there is better communication that happens in person, especially with some of the technical stuff. It helps for me to be able to see what you're doing at your computer screen and vice versa.
You do that good Hangout.
So yeah, that's true. That's true. And so I thought about doing some kind of online thing as well. I'll get to where we're going to start with that anyway. But I also want to make myself available in person. Is there a best time, day that works for people? Like
Thursdays.
Thursdays?
Thursday evening.
Evenings. Do people have evenings? What does evening mean? My schedule, seriously, like the only time I ever come into an office is for this. So just people get off at 5, 6, 7, have mornings, lunches.
Yeah, lunch.
Freeze whenever. Lunches. Could people do lunches? Would you be able to do a lunch?
Depends on where.
It'll probably be in Oklahoma City. So lunches. So what we did was we hung out at Cafe 1910. So Cafe,
That's a nice.
which is a nice place. They tweeted back at me and they were like, "Thanks for hanging out at our place." And I was like, "Okay, we'll keep on doing that." So we grab lunch, get a cup of coffee, hang out for an hour, hour and a half, and talk about whatever we want to talk about in class. We want to do that. Thursdays is okay. Somebody said Fridays. I'd probably rather keep my Fridays available for other stuff. So Thursday lunch. I'll just get there at 11:30. People can come at any time. I'll probably stay until like 1:30 or something like that. Hell, I might just stay longer because I do my work there. But so we'll say Thursdays starting tomorrow, 11:30 at Cafe 1910 in Oklahoma City. It's right on 10th. So you exit 10th from 235.
Before you get to the railroad track.
And before you get to the railroad tracks, like go west. It's like right there. You can't. It's on the left side. You can't miss it. Cafe 1910. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Camps 1910. Thank you.
Sorry.
And so this is their webpage.
And I think it's KAN.
That's right, with a K. Camps1910cafe.net. They were cool with us being there. There'll be a bunch of people. It's going to be lunchtime, but whatever. We just hang out, and it's specifically for talking about class stuff. So we'll eat, but it'll be like come with questions, things that you don't understand. We'll go over anything you want to go over. So cool. They might have the map up here. Yeah, find this. It's ridiculously easy to find. It's really not that difficult.
And it's a lot bigger than it looks like from the street.
Yeah, it's pretty big, and they got outdoor seating if it's nice outside and not like 90 and humid. But there it is, like 235, 10th Street's right over here, and it's literally right off the highway. So cool.
Are you thinking about trying to do that every Thursday?
That will be every Thursday. That's right. So ongoing open office hours.
You always schedule stuff when I can't make it.
What
First there's the Tuesday thing. Now it's the Thursday thing.
was the Tuesday thing?
That was the
Prototype thing.
Oh, the prototype thing. Oh, the JavaScript thing. Oh, I don't schedule those. Those randomly at lunch, as far as I can tell.
It was the homework thing that at Tuesday evening one night.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. That Brent set up. Yes, right. So, Camps 1910, 11:30. Well, I'll be there from 1:30. So.
from 11:30 to.
No lunch breaks Thursday. Oh no. Oh shit. Look at that. I might have to rearrange some things for tomorrow. 11:30 to 1:30. Make it back to code review. They totally postponed that. Okay, we'll be good. I might have to leave at 1 or something like that. I have to get to Norman by 2. So it's like better check my calendar before I set up office hours. Okay, but I will make sure that I stick that for events, and we'll start future ongoing activities, and I'll start it up tomorrow. So.
You mean tomorrow's Thursday.
Oh, it's on Thursday. Sorry. It's all a blur. It's all a blur. Okay, so yes, in 3 days. We have an OK Coders Google Plus account thing. I have never used Google Plus before. I have an account on there, and I don't quite get it, even though I use Twitter and other ones. But this is a good way for us to share all of these videos and to be aware of what's going on. So I think I've invited everybody in the class to this. If you haven't received that email notification or whatever, let me know. Give me your email address, and I'll figure out a way to invite you. I'm going to start sticking stuff on here. So like I put the upcoming events that are coming on, and Google freaks out and wants to recommend hashtags, and I never know which button to click. I hate their interfaces. Sorry, I really don't like Google stuff. It's just anyway. I just need to get used to it. So stuff is going to go on. Stuff is going to happen on here. I have also created a Google Plus community because I don't think you guys can post to my page, and I think I can invite you all to the community, and we can start doing questions that. I'm still trying to figure that thing out. I don't quite understand how all this stuff works. But once we get that going, I'll invite everybody to class-related stuff can be put on there, and then we all can answer that. So I'll check that regularly. Everybody else can check it, and we can kind of figure out a way to help each other online and post tips and tricks and stuff like that. So we'll get there. But let's get everybody on this thing first. So friend me on Google+. It's the OK Coders account. And it's like I can't even figure out how to share this thing because the links are not trivial.
If you add everybody to the same circle, you can.
Okay, and I did that. So I created a circle, and I think I added all your email addresses to it.
So you just need to change the permissions in the circle.
So show me how to do that after
Okay,
class.
yeah.
So we got that. So
I'm gonna get your lectures on here too.
that's what we're doing. So I'm now recording all of the lectures on my Google Plus account, and they will show up. So you can see like the last week's one was right here, Bootstrap Hangout. This week's one, which is being recorded right now, at least I believe it is. Let's
It's just Philip Dow.
Philip, right? But I have another Philip account, and it's okcoders@gmail.com. Seriously, I don't have no idea why Google makes it so hard to use this stuff.
Everything's also too on your YouTube.
On the YouTube. Okay, so we should be on there. So if you search,
It's youtube.com/okcoders.
Ah.
It'll be there.
okay, cool. So we can talk more about this stuff after class and get it all figured out. But you know, I'm learning how to do this as much as you guys are. So right. So eventually that'll be going hopefully full on. So. Oh, and let me double check. So yes, this thing is broadcasting, and so like today's class should just appear on the Google Plus account once I save it, right, or close it. Cool. So those are announcements. We have a full class today, so we have a ton going on. So hopefully you guys looked at Twitter Bootstrap stuff over the break, over the longer weekend, because we didn't have any homework, but you went through some of the lesson material that we have not covered yet today. The first half of today's class is going to go over that. We're going to cover the rest of Twitter Bootstrap stuff that we didn't get to, just so that I'm saying it and you can hear it and see how we use it. We are going a lesson that appeared in the CSS section on positioning because that's pretty advanced, and Twitter Bootstrap lets us avoid most of that stuff. But feel free to check it out. It's in the CSS class repository. So I believe it's called positioning, positions, yes. And if you want to discuss that, we can discuss it at one of the Thursday sessions. But really, it's pretty tough stuff, and it won't really be needed because Bootstrap is going to take care of it, most of it for us. It's not that I discourage you from learning it. We just kind of need to move on. The second half of today's class will be an introduction to JavaScript. So we're going to start working on JavaScript. We're going to get through as much as I had planned for our first day of class. And hopefully get you guys cracking on actual programming, because HTML and CSS is not quite programming yet. It's getting close. It's not quite. So let's get right into the Bootstrap. Once again, I'm pulling material from the Bootstrap class, which you guys should be following on. We went through the intro Bootstrap stuff. And if you recall, we created a directory, so you should still have this on your system somewhere unless you've deleted it. I made one called intro Bootstrap. And so you guys probably called it the same thing. And it's just a regular old Node, a Node Express application. And I could start that up, and I could view that Bootstrap page that I was creating. Recall that we were creating some files inside the public directory, and we had moved all of our Bootstrap stuff into the appropriate style sheets and JavaScripts and fonts directories, right? So find that folder again and go to it. And open it up in Sublime. So however, whatever process you are now using to make that as easy as possible for you, I can open folder and then find it in your Finder somewhere. You can use the open dot or explorer dot trick to find that folder. And Maiwo had taught everybody a shortcut that you could use if you use Sublime, at least on a Mac. And I'll figure out a place to put that on the internet as well. But in the meantime, this works for everybody. So you should end up with something like this, right? This is where we left off. And importantly, we had that index file in our public directory where I'd started adding some bootstrappy type stuff to it, like the tables and the texts and so on. Start up your Express application from the terminal. And so recall you need to be in your main sort of project folder for the Express application, and you do npm start inside of that directory. And you should see something like this. And the trick, something we learned about at that last open office hours session, was that a lot of the trouble comes from understanding what your current working directory is. Remember, everything that you do in the terminal happens in the context of the folder that you are currently inside. And so when you create a new file, it goes in that folder. And this means sometimes you're going to change into your public directory, or you'll change back out into the applications root folder, you need to be aware of where you are, what your current working directory is, so that when you create files or delete files or try to start the node application, you are doing it from the right directory, from the right current working directory. And recall, you can always print your working directory with pwd, and you can use cd to move around, right? So, what we were catching was some of the errors were coming from cding into the public directory and touching a file to create it, and then trying to do npm start from there, which may or may not work because you're not exactly in the right location, or trying to do git stuff from there, which will certainly not work because you're not in the right location. So always be aware of your current working directory. Okay, so we should have our node application. We can our Express application. We confirm by going to localhost 3000, and this is what you should see, or something like it. Michael's last name is not Jackass. I just realized. In any case, yeah, he was in the media recently, and so what we saw though was that we get this really nice layout with Twitter Bootstrap, right? Just by adding classes to our HTML, and as we adjust the size of our window, the layout automatically adjusts and changes, fonts change and sizes change and so on to accommodate the different screen size. So this is that responsiveness that Twitter Bootstrap provides. Let's learn about a few more Bootstrap components. So we're going to start off with forms. Let's make a new page and call it forms.html. You can do this however way you want. You can create a new file in Sublime and immediately save it inside that public folder as forms.html. Or you can touch it from the command line, and it will automatically appear in Sublime because Sublime is watching for that stuff happening, whichever way you want to do it. If you touch it from the command line, you'll have to quit your node application. We're not using handy grunt processes yet. So I'm just going to create it in Sublime and immediately save it as forms.html, making sure that it's in the right folder, which is my intro Bootstrap directory, public, alongside, you know, all that other goodness over there. So, and if you recall, the first thing that we want to do when we create a page that is going to use Twitter Bootstrap is literally copy and paste that template that Bootstrap provides. You can either copy it from the index.html file, just make sure you delete all the old stuff, or maybe easier, or more simply, is go to the getbootstrap.com. Make sure that we are seeing this thing at the front. I mistakenly said make sure you're looking at the purple page, but both are purple. We don't want to use the old version of Bootstrap. If you see a 2.3.2 up here in the URL, that's not the right one. You want to go to just getbootstrap.com and click on Getting Started. And then one of the links over here on the right is basic template, or you can just scroll down a bit until you see it. That guy right there. So we just want to, boom, copy paste that so that we have it in Sublime. And let's hide this guy. Save it, so save your changes, and view forms.html. Restart node if you had to quit it. But go to localhost :/forms.html. And you will see a non-bootstrappy page. We know why that's the case, because our hrefs and links and so on aren't pointing to the right location. Don't fix that yet. We're going to start off with ugly forms, and we are going to see how Bootstrap transforms them.
Where'd you get the forms? I missed that, I'm sorry.
The forms.html page?
No, the stuff from Bootstrap.
Oh.
That we copy and paste.
Yep. So click on their Getting Started at the top and scroll down to their basic template, or click on basic template. There it is right there. Yep. And you can just copy paste that as is. Okay. Let's create a form. We haven't got, these are some HTML tags that we haven't used yet. I think I might have stuck them in the homework one of the homework assignments, but we probably didn't get to them. Let's see what it's like. So there is a form tag in HTML that designates a form. Oh, and let me say first, do we know what forms are used for? Everybody familiar with forms in HTML? It's for getting input from the user, right? So you can take text, you can take dates and email addresses and so on. They look awful. And people hate dealing with forms because they're just, I mean, everybody hates dealing with any kinds of forms, right? It's no better on the internet. So we've got a form tag, really simple. Is this large enough? Make it a little bit larger.
Are you in the, you're in the, on GitHub, on the OKCoders, you're under bootstrap class forms.md?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, all
Yep.
right, thanks.
And I'm on that form input section right
Okay,
now.
perfect.
So.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's add a couple of input fields to our form. This is literally the input tag, and I'm using all of the Sublime shortcuts here. So I say input tab, right, and I get input. And I'm just going to add a couple of these. These are self-contained tags. There is no closing input tag. It is literally just input. And if I save and refresh the page, you can see now that I have a couple of form inputs here that are pretty gnarly. And again, do not bootstrapify this page yet. Don't fix those links. I want everybody to see what these forms look like without it. Inputs normally have a type. So it's an HTML attribute on our tag. And we say type equals, and then give it the type in those quotes. And the default input type is a text, but really we should specify that. And this is just a text input field. It's exactly what we're already seeing. So for both of these inputs, let's say type equals text. And we can save and view that in our page. And we notice nothing changes. That's exactly what we expect. There are other input types. So let's make the first input type an email. So type equals email. This is new in HTML5. And let's make the second one type equals password. And then let's add a button to this thing. So it's common to have a button in forms. We'll use the button tag, which is also relatively new. And it has a type as well, and its type should be submit. It'll be responsible for submitting the form. But a button is not a self-contained tag. It does not close itself. It needs some content in the closing tag. So let's call it submit. So this, whatever we put in here is what the button title will be. And then let's close it with a closing button tag. So that all should be straightforward, right? Save it and view it in the web browser. And so again, we have the same kind of looking fields and now a submit button. But if we click on the email field and type something, on a mobile phone, it will show a special keyboard that includes like the @ key and stuff like that. And then our password field, if we type something, it hides it from the user, right? And especially now with HTML5 and the the email field, we'll get some auto validation. So if I try to submit this, it goes, hey, you don't have an @ address in there. Not every web browser does that, and every web browser does it a little bit differently. So normally you write your own validation in JavaScript, but it's nice that it sort of helps out, right? Let's add another input type here. So I'm going to say between password and submit, sorry. I'm going to do input. I guess that's what I want to do. And we'll say type equals checkbox. This is just another input type, checkbox, all lowercase. Although I bet you it probably doesn't matter. Save it and refresh the page. And now we get a checkbox right here. It doesn't have a label. To give the checkbox a label, just type something next to it. Let's say keep me logged in. And so now you're going to get a field, a checkbox immediately followed by some text, and then the button after that. Nope, not yet. So we'll add some more stuff to it here in a second. But it'll give us that. So you can see we're kind of making like maybe a login field or something where we have an email address, a password, and keep me logged in. Yeah. Now we're not building web inputs yet, but when that person submits that web form, it's going to go to a special page in our server, and our server needs to know how to get this information from these input fields. Like how does it know what the address is, or email address, or password, or logged in option is, right? We want to add an ID attribute to each of these. Now, in previous versions of HTML, you would add a name attribute, and that's how the server would know what it was talking about. In HTML5, we use an ID attribute. And so this is as easy as saying like person email, or you can call it whatever you want. You could even just call it email. It does not matter. ID equals person, or let's call these user, because that would be what this is. User email, user-password. And for the checkbox, ID equals user remember, or whatever. And then we don't really need one for the button. This is how we are going to communicate the values in these fields, so what the input is and whether it's checked or not, to the server. Even though we're not actually doing any of that yet. But it's good practice to start getting in the habit of it. So save and refresh, doesn't change anything on the page. Let's add some labels to our forms. So another tag is the label tag. It is not a self-contained tag. It needs some kind of text in there. And so let's just put let's give each one of these inputs a label. So I'm just sort of hashing out or templating out the labels here. For the first one, it'll be email address. So that's what we'll put in between the label, and that's what's going to appear there, the text. For the second one, it'll be password. And the third one will be a little bit different, as we'll see in a second here. Twitter Bootstrap does it this way. I think it's a little strange, but I'm going to follow the way Twitter Bootstrap recommends it. I want to surround this input field and its text, so the checkbox and its text, with the label tag. That strikes me as odd. So notice what I'm doing here. In these, the label is, label and then close it, and we do the input. Over here, close it, then the input. Over here, the input is inside the label tag. Make sense? Again, I feel that that is kind of strange, but that is how Bootstrap templates it. So.
That's how they have it in the Mozilla network.
And in the Mozilla one too? Okay.
Yesterday.
Cool.
Otherwise, it wouldn't enclose the keeping logged in, right?
It wouldn't, yeah, it would put it somewhere wrong, I guess. Now, for accessibility and some other reasons, we want to tell our labels what fields they're associated with. We do that with a for attribute. So for equals. And then we use the ID. So this label is for user-email. And in quotes, we just put user-email. This label is for user password. We could do the same for the label for the checkbox, but really the HTML already tells us what input field belongs to this label, because the label contains it, right? So we don't need to put one there. I suppose you could. It would probably be harmless, but we don't see that in the template, so we're going to avoid that. So we're starting to build up slightly more complex HTML, right? But it should be pretty straightforward what we're doing. Creating some inputs, giving them labels, making sure everything is kind of associated with each other. Save and look at the page. And now you can see that we've got labels for our fields and so on. It's starting to get a little more organized. We will often want to make these into separate groups. So we want the label and input to be its own thing, the other label and input to be its own thing, the checkbox to be its own thing, and so on. And we can group things in HTML with a div tag. So let's surround each of these label input pairs with a div tag. I'm just going to open a div, and then immediately after the label input pair, I'm going to close it, like that. I'm going to do it for each one of these. And notice that I use indentation to sort of show the structure of my page. Do please get in the habit of doing that. So I'm tabbing over on all of these. So now we see we've got our form. We've got a couple of groups. Each group has a label and an input. It will organize it nicely for us. And it won't just organize it in the HTML for us. It'll organize it visually as well, although that may look uglier. It's hard to say. But now you can see those divs are, make line breaks on our page basically, so that each input and label is on its own sort of line. Everybody get there? All right. Let's make this thing bootstrapped. So if you recall, when we copy and pasted that Bootstrap template, we have to change a couple of things. Bootstrap uses different names for its folders. Bootstrap keeps its style sheets in a CSS directory. We keep our style sheets in a style sheets directory. Bootstrap keeps its JavaScripts in a JS directory. We keep our JavaScripts in a JavaScripts directory. So we need to fix that. Look at the spider. So scroll up near to the top of the page. Inside of the head, you'll see the Bootstrap comment with link href equals. That file does not exist on our server. So Express does not know where that is because there is no CSS folder. There is a style sheets folder. So we got to remember to do this every time we use the Bootstrap template in an Express application. We either change the link or we change the name of the folder, right? And just remember, this is our public style sheets directory with a bootstrap.min.css. And then we need to do the same for the JavaScript. So at the very bottom of the page, which says script source equals, we don't have a JS folder, we have a JavaScript folder. But that's the only thing we need to change. We don't change the name of the file or anything. We want to keep the extensions .js, .css, so on. Now save that. So after making those two simple changes, one at the very top and one at the very bottom, and refresh the page. Now you can immediately see that Bootstrap styles have been applied to this, right? It hasn't quite styled everything the way we want it, but we're getting the fonts and things starting to look bootstrappy. So you should get this. Everybody should get that if you didn't get it. We have assistance in the form of Shelby and Maiwa. Now to really get the Bootstrap styling, what do? How do we add Bootstrap styles to thing on our page?
Classes.
Classes. We need to add some classes to this, right? So first of all, let's clean some stuff. Let's clean up some stuff, sorry. Let's surround everything in our body, so all the way from this header at the top to the end of the form at the bottom, inside of a container. So div class equals container. This will center it on the page and give us a little bit of padding and margin on the side. And then close the div at the very bottom underneath the form. So we're opening it up right in front of our H1, div class equals container, and closing it up at the bottom of the form. Save and refresh, and now it's a little centered, got some padding centered on the page and so on.
Now, is that bottom div in front of the, above
The script stuff?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll learn why scripts go at the very bottom of the page like that later, but for now, we just keep them there. So. Okay, and then we want to say for our form, give it the attribute role equals form. This isn't actually Bootstrap related. This has to do with accessibility and people who have trouble like interacting with computers. Special devices will read that and kind of know what's going on. But we want to do that sort of by default anyway. Shouldn't change anything in our styles, as we can see. Okay. For each of these form groups, so we have three what we'll call form groups, groups of labels and inputs. Let's add the class form group, so literally form-group. This guy right there. Just add that to each one of those divs. I find copying and pasting to be slightly faster. And when you get that done, save that and look at the page. Still doesn't quite look different, but we're getting there. If you remember, we apply styles by targeting more and more nested groups of classes and selectors and what's going on here. Yeah.
My forms actually has more padding whenever I did that.
So they might have there might be a little bit of changes. So
I actually have padding in between hello world, email address, password field, keep me logged in, and submit.
okay, that's probably okay. It probably depends on how large your window is and so on. So we'll really see this in just a second. For all of our inputs, let's add a class at the very end here called form control. So class equals form email and password inputs. So our two text inputs. Form control. So sorry. Class equals form-control. And how do I know to do this? I'm following instructions from Twitter Bootstrap's page, and I'm just sort of condensed it into this lesson material, right? But it's these two inputs, type equals email and type equals password. I'm appending this class equals form control at the end of them. And refresh the page. That is a radical change, right? And so now our form inputs kind of look really nice, and they stretch all the way across the screen. That we want, you can see what we really want if we make it smaller like that, but we'll get there. It's starting to look a little bit nicer though, right? Let's add some styling to our button. So button type equals submit. Before you close that opening tag here, let's add class equals, and in quotes we're going to add two classes. The first is btn, which identifies it as a button. And then do a space, because we can add more than one class to a tag with a space. bt-default. btn, thank you. So we've had two classes, separating them with a space. Save and refresh. And now we've got a button. That looks okay. You'll notice that my text here is really hugged up against that checkbox. We can fix that just by adding a space in the HTML. So if I stick a space over here, HTML will recognize a single space. So That'll kind of make it a little less scrunched. All right. So this looks pretty good. This is starting to look like a pretty reasonable looking form. Let's add some panache. Let's add some style. There are additional attributes on input fields, tons of attributes, in fact, that we can use, but one of them that I want to show you here is called the placeholder attribute. So again, on my input, I'm going to add a placeholder attribute, so placeholder equals, and in quotes, this is text that's going to appear inside that input field in a lighter color that disappears as soon as the user types something into it. So it's like giving the user a hint. It's the placeholder text until they add something. And so for the email placeholder, so placeholder equals, and mine is sort of auto, line breaking like that. Type a valid email address in quotes. And then the placeholder for the password field, so I'm just adding placeholder here. Make sure you're getting it in. The placeholder here will just be, I don't know, password, so nothing different. Save that and refresh to see the effect. So you'll see it adds this sort of like grayed out text here. Yeah. And if I click in that and type, as soon as I type a letter, that placeholder text goes away. But notice we're getting some nice effects here too. Like when I click on this, it draws this blue focus ring. When I click on this guy, it sort of switches the focus ring and so on. And my password field is still hidden. So we're getting a nice looking form now using the Bootstrap styling. Let's change the class of our button. We'll keep the BTN, but let's change BTN default to BTN primary. And I'm going to show you once we finish going through this where I'm getting this information from, so you don't just think I'm making it up and like, how am I supposed to know this? But now we have a blue button. Starting to look pretty slick. What I don't like about this form is that it occupies the entire page, right? Let's center this thing up. Let's make it so that it will be sort of like right in the middle of our page like this, and these things will be a little bit smaller. Because what is happening right now is that these form input fields just occupy the whole width of the page. How do we do that? Do you guys remember how to do that? It's like if I want a div like right in the middle of my page that's in the center no matter how I move things around. Yes. So we need to set the left and right margins to auto, and so the shortcut is 0 auto. And so what I want to do, I now want to take this whole form and H1 and everything and give it a new div. So we'll often use divs to group things in HTML so that we can apply styling to them. The div has no other function except for to group that HTML together. And so again, everything that is now in the container, so all the way from the H1, again, all the way down through the form, let's just surround it with a div. And let's set its class to form container. Form container is not a Bootstrap class. We're going to define our own class. And so I'm going to indent everything kind of nicely. The way I'm doing that, so I select, and then on a Mac I can do Command and then the right square bracket key. This guy. Probably Tab works as well. So you can just tab it over, I suppose. Yeah, select and then press Tab, and it scoots it over for that. And then I want to make sure I close that new div that I just made, right? So this is what our closing tag should all look like now.
Would you go back up to the form container?
Yep. It can be smart to start adding comments to things once your HTML gets this complex, right? So I might add a comment here. So close form container, and then close container, just so I kind of know what's going on. And remember, this is how you do HTML comments. It's a weird looking syntax, but not terribly important for now. So let's add in a style tag in our head. Again, we might put this in style sheets, but we're not linking to our style sheets yet, so let's just use a style tag. We do this in our head, so I'm in the head of my document now at the top. Style tab gives me that nice template. And I just defined a .form container class that I want to give some styling to. Let's set its width 500 pixels, and let's set its margin to 0 auto. And so this is, again, this is an important point to realize about Twitter Bootstrap. We are using Bootstrap styles and then adding our own, right? We can totally do whatever we want with a page. We can keep adding our own styles to Bootstrap. And that's exactly what we're doing here. All right. Save that. And if we've got our HTML correct, this thing is now going to be 500 pixels wide and centered on our page. And we can move this window around, and it will always stay centered, and so on. And again, this is what our code looks like. So this is our custom CSS.form container. And then we make sure that we've got our divs surrounding everything appropriately. That's a pretty nice looking form at this point. So if you guys have ever worked with web forms before, you know that they start ugly and that it can take quite a bit of styling to get them to look nice, and more importantly, consistent across different browsers. This will look like this on Firefox, Opera, Internet Explorer, anything, right?
So you did margin auto 0.
No, 0 auto.
0 auto.
Yep. And remember, so margin, when you give it two values, so it's a value space value, the first value is for the top and bottom margins, and the second value is for the left and right. So that's just something about CSS that you get used to. Everybody get there? Doing good? Can I see some nods? Because I have a hard time knowing how everybody's doing unless I get like nods from the class. Nods are like, I have no idea. Yeah. So my Shelby, you want to check it out? Make sure the classes are right and he's got his structure correct. Sweet. Okay, let's answer the question, how the hell do I know how to do this? So if I look at my Bootstrap page, so I just gone to bootstrap.com or getbootstrap.com. You know, we were at the basic template. I'm going to click over to CSS. And over on CSS, at my right over here, you see there's a forms section. Twitter Bootstrap gives me an example. Here's the code that generates it. And so we basically did this, minus the file input, but built it up from hand, rather than copy and pasted the template. In reality, normally you're just going to copy paste this thing and you know, start changing things until you get it to what you want it to look like. That is seriously how you do it. Like, it's not like let me figure out what these classes are. Bootstrap provides all of this documentation in the expectation that you will copy, paste, and adjust as you need it. Right? Totally okay. So what we understand about this is how we apply the CSS style, so we get why this works. It's a collection of CSS. We add classes to our HTML, and we can always look at that CSS if we want to. If we want to see how in the world does Twitter add that nice focus field around these things when you click on them, the sort of blue highlight there, we can just look in the CSS and find out. And it's open source, so we can use it for something else in one of our other projects. Cool. Everybody get that? This is an introduction to forms. We're going to spend an entire day on input once we learn how to do some of the server-side programming, because getting input from you, and since we'll sort of be building a blog, we want to be able to get like the name of a blog post and the content from the user, and some login information as well. So, but sort of an introduction to forms.
In terms of the
link at the
No
head.
matter where it goes.
Yeah,
This guy.
CSS link.
Yep.
Do you need to list the? You don't need to list the root directory. What is the first file that you're starting with?
Oh, you're always starting with the public directory here. Yeah.
So we list that in the.
It doesn't need to be listed in here, because Express, as we'll learn in a couple of weeks, automatically assumes the file you're requesting is coming from the public directory. So Express adds public to that link in order to serve the file.
Okay.
So, and we will cover that in depth in a couple of weeks once we get good at JavaScript. What's that?
It's not picking up my styles.
So did you get your Bootstrap styles in there? So if you look in your style sheets directory, We want to make sure that we have all this Bootstrap stuff in there, right?
Mhm.
Is that everything? Because I was fussing around with this. I had to like copy and paste more Bootstrap code that wasn't in this.
No, that should be everything. You shouldn't even need all of that. The only thing, yeah, the only thing you really need is this bootstrap.min.css.
What else?
Is Bootstrap. So you can only use the pieces of it that you want, and they provide independent style sheets and independent JavaScript files if you want to do that. So rather than using all 5,000 lines of code, you might only use 300 or something like that. In general, we'll just include everything, right? Shelby, we want to see if we sheets here. Okay. We have 2 more sections of Bootstrap stuff that I wanted to cover. You guys already should have looked at the component stuff on the page, right? So did people review the components material? We also have some new material that I put up there today on the grid system. We're going to postpone on these. I want to see if we can't get ourselves caught up. So we're going to script, and if we have additional time, we'll come back and look at the CSS stuff. We're going to look at this CSS stuff no matter what. I think I'm just going to spread it out over a couple of days instead. The components is pretty easy. So if you haven't already looked at that, look at that. Again, it's just a matter of adding some HTML and tags and classes to our page. Grids is slightly more complex, so we're going to make sure we explicitly cover that in a future class. We'll probably cover that on Wednesday, before we go on to the next bit of JavaScript. Is that all right with everybody? Because I do want to get to the programming.
Yes.
In the meantime, I might as well say this now. Again, you're not going to have an explicit homework assignment tonight. There's nothing that you need to get from the web page unless you haven't done the Bootstrap homework yet. What I really want you to do for homework is review this Bootstrap class repository, everything in here. If you haven't done it already, review everything in here. There's new material, the grid, that we will go over, like I said, in class on Wednesday. But if you start by reading this stuff, this is how I would encourage you to do it. Read it, listen to it in class, and then go back and read it again, right? So you'll read it, you'll have questions, you won't quite understand everything, that's okay. We talk about it in class, that improves your understanding. You go back and read it again, and you should have more aha moments, right? And then also, in our OK Coders, there is the JavaScript intro class. That's what we're about to go into. Your homework will be to look over this stuff. Also, create that Code Academy account if you have not done it so, and start practicing JavaScript in that. And make sure you are reading that Eloquent JavaScript book. That stuff should be read before coming to class. So, and then again after class. That's really what your homework will be for Wednesday. No explicit material, review. Keep reviewing. Unless, again, you haven't done the Bootstrap homework. In this case, you are now ready to do most of this, like the index, about, and sign up, and maybe you could put off reports, so because that'll use the grid system. If you've already done that, great, you're in good shape. Okay, so we're going to move on before taking a break. I am now pulling from the JavaScript intro class repository. Let's JavaScript. So this is really what this whole 10 weeks is about, learning how to program. And we're going to get into like actually building a web application. We've got CSS and HTML. Time to write starting code. Time to start writing code. Quit your Node application. So Control-C that thing. And CD out of that directory. CD into some other directory. I'm just going to go up one level. I'm in my Bootstrap directory here. You can stick this thing anywhere you want. I don't care where you stick this, but we want a folder somewhere. So I'm going to CD out another directory, so I'm one level up, another level up. Let's have a folder called, we don't need it yet. Never mind. In fact, let's just do this. I'm getting ahead of myself. Type node. N-O-D-E. Remember downloading and installing that thing a couple of weeks ago? Press return. Everybody get that? Okay. JavaScript is a programming language introduced back in the 90s for use in dynamic web pages. That is, pages that could respond to user interactions and update their content. So we went from static to user interaction. Since then, JavaScript is being used in other environments. So it's been introduced into server-side programming. It's been introduced into databases. You can actually write database queries in JavaScript now. But importantly, especially for us, server-side programming with JavaScript has been popular thanks to Node. Node is a runtime environment that provides access to system functionality through JavaScript. So it interprets a JavaScript program, runs the JavaScript program using Chrome's JavaScript interpretation runtime platform, and then also provides APIs to like reading from files, getting input from the user, connecting to sockets, which is how a web page will work, and so on. And so there's a whole bunch of, you can actually look at Node, it's open source. There's a whole bunch of C and C++ code that makes up Node. And so where you need to access a file, Node has a bunch of C code for doing that and then exposes that inside of JavaScript using what are called these application programming interfaces or APIs. But in the meantime, we're going to learn how to do all of this in JavaScript. Programming languages are complex, extraordinarily complex. This is going to be hard, right? This is going to be frustrating. If any of you guys have ever learned a programming language before, I think really what makes programming languages difficult to work with is that they are really picky. You have to get what's called the syntax, or the code that we type out that kind of looks like English. You have to get it exactly right. You have to, one, know what you want the program to do, and you need to be able to tell the computer to do that, exactly that, and nothing else with specificity. And then you got to make sure that you type out that instruction correctly. So you got to know what you want, and you got to know how to tell the computer to do it, right? That is tricky. That means that we're going to learn a couple of things. We're going to learn how to think clearly. So we have to be able to think in terms that the computer understands. This is an interesting dynamic as we interact with the computer. Is the computer thinking like a human, or are we starting to think more like a computer? It's the latter for sure. Interestingly enough, a bit of history, computer was a term that was originally applied to people. They were folks who did mathematics in like code breaking activity in World War. If you guys have ever read any Neil Stephenson. So a computer 60 years ago was a person, which is pretty cool, I think. We are going to focus on practical examples. So we're going to learn a lot of like the actual practice of using JavaScript, and we're going to only touch on the theory insofar as it's necessary. But some theory will be necessary. We've got to learn what syntax is. We have to learn what an expression means. We need to understand variables and values and so on. There's no way getting around that. But we're going to real world as possible, which would be somewhat different from a computer science curriculum. So Node, again, is this runtime environment for our JavaScript programs. So this is how we are going to use JavaScript for now. In the past, you might have used it in the browser. So you type inside of the console, inside of your browser, like this thing. If I go to my console, I can type JavaScript in here. We are going to primarily focus on server-side JavaScript, so we're going to do it from the command line. We do that by starting Node. When we start Node, we get what is known as a read, evaluate, print loop, or read, evaluate, print loop. So REPL, or REPL. We the REPL, so this is a prompt, just like that $ in Bash is a prompt. What we are typing is not commands like we do in Bash, but JavaScript. We're typing JavaScript instructions into this thing. Node reads those instructions, executes them, and then prints out the result of those instructions, and then returns us back to the prompt. And so, for example, I can type a little line of JavaScript here. The number 5 is a line of JavaScript. Press return, and Node evaluates that. 5 evaluates to 5. That is a technical term. Evaluate is, not 5. And then gives us the prompt back, right? And so read, evaluate, print result, give us back the prompt. That makes it a loop, right? So we're just running inside of this endless loop that is waiting for input instructions, JavaScript, from us, right? Another example here, 5 plus 5, basic arithmetic as we've seen in Eloquent JavaScript. It evaluates to 10, and we return back to the prompt, right? We're going to start with the REPL, and then we're going to move our JavaScript to files and use Node to execute them, but this is where we're going to start. I am basing this lesson material, although not entirely repeating, what is in Eloquent JavaScript. So let me again stress, you should be reading this book. This is a textbook. Yeah, let's just call it what it is. We're not going to read every chapter, but we're going to read like half of it. It's excellent. I bought this book because it was a revelation about some of this functional programming stuff in here that I learned about. And I think that not only is he introducing the eloquent parts of JavaScript, but he does a good job of introducing it eloquently. So I find it very readable. It's a good book, and it's available for free on the internet. So, okay, ready? For us, the fundamental unit of a programming language is going to be data. Yeah, they may not be true theoretically, but from a practical standpoint, I think that is very true. If programs do nothing else, they work with data. And data is not an abstract topic. My God, data, this is something special. A number is data. The number 12, so I'm going to type this into my node REPL, is data. And JavaScript understands that. JavaScript understands data. And again, it reads this thing in, gets the input, evaluates it, 12 evaluates 12, and we get the output back. So this is our read, evaluate, print loop. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can really see what's going on here. Okay, so, right. There are other types of data. Text is also data in a program, right? At the abstract level that we're working at. Ultimately, it's zeros and ones. Ultimately, it's high and low voltages in a computer circuit, represented as bits. But that doesn't really matter for us, although it makes for a neat reading in our introduction chapter. So text is a type of data. This is called a string in programming languages, S-T-R-I-N-G, string, like a string of whatever, of yarn or something. We put text in quotes. So a string in JavaScript goes, so like hello world, which is classic programming lingo. JavaScript, it just evaluates to itself, prints that out, gives us back our prompt, right? There are other types of data. So you're going to hear me talk about types of data. You've read about types of data. Data always has a type. Number is a type of data. String or text is a type of data. Booleans are a type of data. Undefined, as we're going to learn about, is a type of data. In JavaScript, functions are a type of data, which is pretty awesome, and not every programming language does that. And then objects are a type of data. We're going to learn about that in future chapters. But for now, we have strings and text. I'm sorry, numbers and text. Boolean, I'm going to introduce right away in addition because it's super important. So JavaScript understands what is known as Boolean algebra, or true and false values. So a Boolean is just a thing, a piece of data that is either true or false, and that's it, right? The number can be anything, 0 to a bajillion, right? Text can be a bunch of anything. A Boolean is true or false. And so if I type true into the console here, JavaScript understands what I'm talking about. This is all lowercase true. That is a actual data. That is stuff that JavaScript gets. False, JavaScript also gets. We are going to use Booleans all over the place. They are fundamental to programming. And if anything, they're really the lowest, simplest kind of data you can get because it's a 0 or a 1. That is a bit. A 0 is false, nothing, and a 1 is true, something, right? And underneath the hood, that's how they're being represented, as zeros and ones. So we start with data. We got 3 types. We will do stuff to our data. That is maybe the first thing that we can do with it. So we will operate on it. That's what that's called. And the most basic kinds of operations that you can do in a computer programming language are mathematical operations. That is, after all, what computer programming was designed for. Computers were built to perform mathematics. So we don't want to freak out. We're not going to get into some crazy complex mathematics, but let's show you with math inside of a computer program. So I can take 2 bits of data, like a 12, and maybe another 12, and I can add them together. Performing an operation on this data, the operation is addition. I use the addition symbol to do that. JavaScript evaluates that operation, or Node evaluates it, gives me the result, sticks me back in the prompt, right? We call this an expression. So you've heard him talk about statements and expressions. We're going to get into that distinction a little bit more deeply. It's a hugely important distinction. I don't want to belabor it, but this is called an expression. Everything that we type into JavaScript is either going to be an expression or statement. We'll get there. For now, it's a technical term that I want you to be aware of. JavaScript supports all kinds of mathematical operations. So I can subtract numbers from each other. 12 minus 12, obviously 0. Let me pull this off the edge of my screen here. Works a little bit better. Hopefully that's not too distracting. Okay. Actually, because I want it to be off the screen. We can multiply symbol for that in a programming language, very common. So 12 times 12 is 144. And of course we can divide numbers. 12 times 3 is 4. There are other mathematical operations that we can take advantage of. Modulo division, which we won't get into. Floors and ceilings, which are provided as part of some libraries. There's all kinds of cool stuff that you can do with math inside of programming. But for now, we just want to understand that we have data. We operate on that data, right? So we got numbers. We perform math with it. Nothing too crazy. We can make longer expressions. We can build expressions up out of expressions. So like I could add 3 numbers together in a row rather than just one number. And JavaScript gets what I'm talking about. So it adds 5 and 5 as an expression, takes the result, which is 10, and then adds 10 to 5, and I get 15. And so under the hood, it's like evaluating each expression as we go, right? And don't think of this as 5 plus 5 plus 5. Think of this as 5 plus 5, full stop, now 10 plus 5. Yeah? JavaScript is going in a very particular order underneath the hood. If we remember from math, we have an order of operations. You guys remember order of operations from like basic math? Multiplication happens first, yeah, in the order of operations. So the result of this statement is 7. 2 times 3 and then plus 1. That might seem trivial. Programming languages have an order of operations. Things happen with precedence in a programming language. So there'll be the equivalent of multiplication in some really long expression that you'll type out, and that thing will happen first, even though when you read it from left to right, this other thing is coming first. Yeah, we want to be aware of that. And math provides a great example for like all of the stuff inside of programming languages. It's one of the reasons why computer science curriculums are so math heavy. You learn this math, and then you go over to computer science, and you're like, oh, it's all math. So, which is somewhat true underneath the, not only underneath the hood, but in terms of the languages as well. So we like order of operations. We can control the order of operations just as in mathematics using parentheses, right? Add 1 plus, I use a parenthesis. We will do the exact same thing when we're programming with more complex expressions. We will use parentheses to control the order of operations. Super important point that we will learn much more about. So we can combine really complex expressions and control the order of operations with parentheses. So I'm going to throw one out here. You guys aren't looking at the online stuff real quick, so you don't want exactly see what this is going to equal. Want to tell me what that's going to equal? So what's going to happen here?
Add the 5 and the 10.
Okay, 5 and 10 is first.
And then you
15, that's going to be 30, that's going to be divided by 3, so that's going to be 10.
Okay, so let's slow down and look at the order. So when we have an order of operations in parentheses, the most deeply nested parentheses is evaluated first, right? So you start from the inside and you work your way out. Is the most deeply nested group of parentheses. We have a parenthesis group here and a parenthesis group here, and then inside this one we have another parenthesis group, so that's deeper. So 5 plus 10 gets evaluated, and then Node goes, okay, we got 15 there. I've got this group here and a division sign, and then that group there, so I'll do this group first. 5 plus 10 times 2 is 30, okay, got 30, divided by, oh, parenthesis group, so I need to add 2 plus 1, 3, so 30 divided by 3 is 10, right? And again, so we're using math here because math offers a good explanation of what we are going to do all the time when we start writing more complex programs. You will see stuff like this everywhere. Nested parentheses that control how things are getting evaluated and so on. So we want to make sure that we're familiar with that. I'm going to show you a couple more operations, and then we'll be in good shape for taking a break. We can do operations with mathematics, but we can also do operations with text, with strings, and with Boolean values. Yeah, we have lots of different kinds of operations. And so I can take a string, like hello, and I can add, or concatenate, as it's called in programming languages, string concatenation, another string to it. So hello string plus world string. And the result is one word, hello world. So notice, be careful, Node is not adding a space to our strings. We have to manually do all of that ourselves, right? But we have this operation that we can perform with strings, string concatenation. Really basic operation that we want to take advantage of. Can I multiply 2 strings together? Nan. Anybody know what nan is? Nan. No? Not a number. Right? And so Node is trying to make these things into numbers and multiply them together, but they're not, so we get a nan. So no, we cannot multiply strings together. In some programming languages, you can multiply a string to produce two. So something that we're going to learn is programming languages all do things basically the same, like they all need to accomplish the same kind of stuff, but they'll add flourishes and interpret things slightly differently. One of the things we want to get out of this class is even though we're learning JavaScript, really we're learning about programming, right? So we're going to learn enough theory to understand that if you were to skip over to another programming language, you would get what's going on, right? Even though we're concretely learning JavaScript. So we can add strings together. What happens if we try to add strings that contain... They're not numbers, right? They're strings. So what should the result of this be?
Yeah. Oh well.
Nope. 1224 as a string, right? Right. So we always need to be aware of this. Is why types are so important in programming languages. And this is why he talks about that a bunch in Eloquent JavaScript. We need to be aware not only of what data we've got, so what its value is, and I'll go into a lot more detail on that in a few, or it's hello. We have to be aware of its type. We need to know if it's a number or if it's a string or if it's a Boolean or whatever. Because when you add two strings that contain string representations of numbers, we get back a string, right? We need to know what type we're working with. So we have string operations. So we've seen, mathematical operations. We have string operations. We also have Boolean operations. This is Boolean, what is known as Boolean algebra, okay? And so there are two primary operations in Boolean algebra, out of which you can, well, there's not as well. I guess I didn't include that one in the lectures. But there are two operations out of which you can create just about every other operation, except for not. My bad. It's called and or, right? Which is really annoying to say. These are Boolean operations. So think of it as like plus and minus and subtraction and division, but for true and false. And we write and in JavaScript by, that's awful, 2 ampersands, if those are ampersands. And we write or by 2 vertical bars. So let me type this on my computer. It's the Shift 7 on my keyboard, ampersands. That is the and Boolean operation. And backslash on my keyboard is this pipe, we call it a pipe. Vertical bar is the or operation. So again, and or, right? These are operations. If I just type this, Node's going to be like, I need more help. Give me some more instructions. If you ever see this in Node and you can't figure out what's going on, Control-C, and it will return you back to the prompt. Yes, well, I saw a hand up.
I noticed that a lot of the syntax in JavaScript and Java are similar. Were they both developed by Sun Microsystems?
No. Okay, so good question. So JavaScript, so we're talking about syntax. Syntax is what the programming language actually looks like, brackets and double ampersands and so on. The syntax looks very similar to Java syntax, which looks very similar to C syntax. So really this is all coming out of C syntax. C syntax kind of started this stuff. Unfortunately, JavaScript is different in very annoying ways from C, even though it looks like C. So if you have experience with C, be very careful about applying that experience to JavaScript. Similarly with Java. Java was developed by Sun Microsystems probably back in the 90s, I would guess. JavaScript was developed by Brandon Eich, who is, or was, currently CEO of Mozilla. He was kicked out over a flap, if anybody remembers. But he developed JavaScript as a programming language for browsers, for dynamic interactivity in browsers. And he called it JavaScript to capitalize on the marketing that Java was getting from Sun. So it was a marketing move. But they're otherwise really unrelated. They're very different languages, especially underneath the hood. In a sense, yeah. So he might have another interpretation of that. Okay, so let's talk about what these and or operations do. I have a Boolean value, so remember, think of this as like a plus or a multiplication, right? So I need to have 2 Boolean values, like a true and a true. That's an operation, and it evaluates to true. In Boolean algebra, and will evaluate 2 Boolean data bits to true if and only if both of those pieces of data are also true. And so true and true is true, but true is false. False and true is false, and false is also false. I have put a table of these results on this document inside of Git, because it can be a little bit weird, especially since Boolean algebra is perhaps not as familiar to you guys as basic algebra, but it's really not too hard. This is just an operation like a plus or a subtraction or whatever, and we just need to learn what the results of this operation are whenever we use the two possible values that we can in Boolean, which is true and false. The OR operation, true whenever one of its pieces is true. It's only false when both of its pieces are false. So true or true is true. True or is true. Is true, and false will be false. So it's like if one of them is true, then I'm true. With the and, if both of them are true, then I'm true, right? There is another operation which I did not include and should totally add because we'll see it all over the place, is the not operation. Not turns a Boolean value into its opposite, and it is used with the exclamation mark. So I say, and then either true or false, or some expression that evaluates to true or false. And so not true is false, and not false is true. Claude Shannon, another amazing individual in the history of computer science, developed information theory. He also developed the application of Boolean algebra to electronic circuits as his MIT dissertation in the 20s. I believe it was the 20s. It made computing possible. This guy realized that you could take basic electrical circuits and do Boolean algebra with them. So if you know anything about electronics, when you have two switches in parallel and then connect them, that's the equivalent of an AND operation. They need to both be turned on in order for a current to continue to flow. I'm sorry, if they're in series. If they're in parallel, either one of them has to be turned on in order for current to continue to flow, and that's the equivalent of an OR operation. It turns out that you can do all of arithmetic with Boolean algebra. So as soon as this guy realized that you could do Boolean algebra with the basic circuits, like telephone circuits, everybody realized that you could do arithmetic with telephone circuits. Once you can do arithmetic with telephone circuits, you can do multiplication, you can do some other weird stuff, maybe not division, but you can certainly do subtraction, you can deal with negative numbers, and by doing things a little bit more complexly, you can do division as well. Now you have a computer. Yeah. So this Boolean algebra was invented by George Boole in the 1800s. Claude Shannon figured out that you could apply it to electrical circuits in the 20s and made computing possible. So I like history of technology type stuff, so that's why I introduced people like Tim Berners-Lee and Claude Shannon. So Boolean algebra is badass. Zeros and ones, literally. True and false. Zeros and ones represented as high or low voltages in a computer circuit. So, and you can do math with it really fast, it turns out. Okay, we're making good progress. Let's take a break. We have a few more operations to look at, and then we are going to discuss variables. So, all right. 5 minutes. Yeah, do it.
I can fix your Google Plus Hangout here. All you need to be doing is posting the Hangout to your community events page, or to the community page.
Okay.
So just go to plus.google.com.
So I got that guy running. We'll just keep that guy running.
That's fine, yeah.
I have plus.google.com. Okay.
Okay, so you want people to be able to post stuff, right? Like to ask you questions. You can do that a couple different ways. They can either leave you comments here, and you can see them.
I want them to be able to create new questions.
Okay, so go to this community page that you made.
So hopefully it'll show it here. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So what you need to do here. So this, you'll see that I posted. This is class 1.
Okay.
Here.
Cool.
So there. That's like what you want people to do.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then other people can comment.
So
on
what
it, right?
you need to be doing, so you like those people in the class to approve them. You need to be posting your event
here
right, instead of to that page. I mean, you can still do it there, but
so
then
basically,
here.
I want to post everything here.
Exactly.
And make sure everybody's interacting with that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's all you have to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you can either post it as the event,
okay,
or you can post the video, whatever.
Oh,
but
yeah,
then,
right.
Because see, it looked like you were creating events in advance.
Okay.
So like all the events and everything that like you talked about here today,
right,
those should be going here.
Right.
And people can check in
Okay,
and saying
cool.
that we have for like
Or
for your office
I guess
hours or
I
whatever.
mean they might be listening to the event somewhere else as well. Because like it's the
Exactly,
JavaScript, then I
yeah.
would link to it. From here
Exactly,
or
or other people can link to it,
Okay.
or whatever. But yeah, everything should
Put it
hover
on here.
around there. Yeah.
Awesome, sweet, thank you.
Now, where's the community?
So yeah, so how do we find the community? Can I? So I'm inviting people to it.
It's easy. It's easier. It's easier to.
Can
Well,
I
you're
make
the
it?
administrator. You're
Right.
the administrator. So if you're letting people post to it, you have to send out the invite because you're the moderator.
Right, and which I think I did. So I invited it to the same people in circles.
So yeah. So if you just
So like if I do invite, I just choose the. So I have the summer session circle.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah. So then you just everything gets sent out to them.
Okay, good. So well, they'll know that they need to join it.
I joined the class, but was it the community?
No, probably not.
He
So
sent out two separate.
probably
he
sent
sent
out
out
two.
two separate invites.
that's right.
Yep.
Yeah. I sent
That's
out
right.
one to the class or to my OK Coders Google Plus Philip Dow page.
That's like to be your friend.
That's to be your
something,
friend.
okay.
But then this thing, the communities, you'll have
This is
to.
where you can collaborate.
Yeah, we'll collaborate. Can I link? I'd like to. What I really want to do is link to it from my main page so that people see it on the profile and it can go straight to the community.
Yeah, just post the community there.
Okay,
So go to
how would
your.
I-
So
I'm
go
here.
to your main. Go to your main. Or you're on your
Yeah,
main
so I'm,
Google
like,
page.
posting a
Okay.
page, yeah.
It's better to have two windows. So to have two windows.
So I should be able to
one
get the
for,
link
one,
from the community, right?
Yeah, one for the community, but it should have like a name. I can never
Yeah,
remember
see
what
it?
it says.
So and then
Okay,
here,
so there.
so the see. and
So yeah,
that-
just copy
that's what
that.
frustrates me. I was like, please give it a name.
You can code it. You can code it that way.
So
I just
here-
can't remember how to do it.
Here's our.
But you'll still have to. If everybody's able to write to it and all that stuff. And then you wanted. You may not want to do it.
The public.
Well.
Well, I'll keep it public for now.
Oh,
but
public means it's
Because
just going to post to your
post
page.
to my forum.
So
yeah,
that
my
everybody
main
can
page, yeah.
everybody can see it on this OK Coders thing, which is.
I got invited.
You should. Just he can do it right now. Just
Phil.
get him your
Thanks
Google
again
Plus.
for letting me.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
hang out
No,
on
that's great.
Wednesday,
So-
and sorry for being
That worked out.
a little late.
Oh,
today.
that's right.
Yeah, I
Okay, that's
left my laptop with my friend. I was at Bonnaroo weekend.
Oh, sweet.
And, yeah,
I know a
so-
bunch of people who are at Bonnaroo apparently.
Yeah, I ran into a few.
Oh, cool.
I
Oh,
ran
no
into
way.
Katie.
Oh, did you?
over
Okay,
there.
that's who I was
Yeah.
thinking of. So.
Yeah, I had no idea that she was going.
That's awesome.
And
She was probably
I knew-
really excited to see you.
Yeah, I knew the group that she was going with.
Okay, I know Taylor.
Okay,
But
yeah.
I don't know the others. Rob.
Melina.
Patrick, right? Oh, okay, and you know Melina because Melina was new to that group, I think.
Was she?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
They,
You see-
at least Patrick, she and I went together.
Cool.
Uh,
That's awesome. How would they fucking? Yeah, right.
It was unbelievable. It was probably the best experience of my life. We were just about.
Awesome.
Yeah, we left a couple days early, stayed in Memphis, then in Nashville, and then got to Manchester the day of.
Okay. Yeah. Friday was it Friday or Thursday? Probably Thursday, right?
Got there Thursday morning.
Yeah.
That whole crew got there Wednesday.
That's right.
And was waiting in line for like 5 hours because the lines to get into the campsite, which
Right. And I think they got there late on Wednesday too.
They did. And so we stayed in Nashville because one of the people in my group had gone the previous year. Had gone morning, day of.
Okay.
And no wait. It took us about 30-45 minutes to get into the campsite. It was perfect. It was perfect. And then leaving, we left basically
'Cause you're way on
right
the
after
outskirts of the-
midnight.
yeah,
right
yeah,
after
yeah.
John and got back
Badass.
in. Yeah.
She just sent me a text. She's on her way back from Oklahoma. So,
Oh, really?
yeah.
Okay.
Cool, let me help this
Pretty
gentleman
awesome,
out here.
yeah.
But that's sweet.
Anyway,
Yeah, no
thank
worries
you.
about it.
Tell me how to join the.
Let's see. I probably haven't invited you to the Google Plus page. Right?
I'm not in the group.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So let's do that. I just need your
Yeah.
email address. So let me go to the community, I think. And then on this guy, I can invite you with your email address, probably.
This one, YUSHU.
YUSHENG?
Yes.
Yeah, looks good. Okay. Yep, there we go. And then I think I can just do that. And then you'll be, yeah, you should receive that, and then you'll be a part of the community and can post there. So.
Okay, thanks.
Cool.
Now you see that everything you were doing on your individual page, you should do on the community page.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
It'll make
Can
it
I
easy.
record Hangouts from the community page?
Of course, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you can initiate it. You can initiate it from the community page.
That's what we'll do then. Cool. All right, so I'm gonna run to the restroom real quick. All right, we'll get started up here in about 2 minutes, so we'll bring it back. Did you get your call? What?
Your brain? Like play on our brain? Yeah.
Okay, cool. And I said that you were host. Okay.
Well, actually, a friend of mine has it. We were working on it together and we had I don't know what's happening with that now. I got named right to OKC, but it's not set up yet. I'm still working on the site. I do. Yes, I do. I'm working on it.
That's like the worst part.
I think everything else.
Hi, this is Stephanie. Hi, it's Kathy.
Yeah,
Hi,
you just
I
have
need to
to
make a quick reservation for Saturday's meeting.
It's pretty cool. You want to see my logo?
Sure.
Awesome.
And let's put 16. Okay, third.
I may also.
I guess I'll call you. Okay, I'm
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so like any questions or anything you have, he wants people to post. You just post to the community thing.
That way, that's a good idea.
So that everybody can see it.
Yeah.
All right, let's start up again, guys. Still got lots of stuff to cover. Okay, so we just introduced Booleans, trues and false. We've seen that we can perform operations mathematically and on string concatenation. We can also perform comparisons. Comparisons are another kind of operation. And the result of a comparison is a Boolean, right? So we're going to compare two things, and that is either going to be true or false. And so a common comparison is equality comparison. In JavaScript and most programming languages, you use a double equal sign for equality comparison. So here I'm saying 5 equal to 5, and the result is true, right? So a comparison always evaluates to a Boolean. Again, 5 equals 5. You've got to be super careful here. This is a common programming error and has led to security leaks and bugs in some serious bits of hardware. If you try to do 5 equals 5 with the assignment equal operator, which we'll learn about in a second, you get a reference error. This is an exception in JavaScript. Your program just crashed or stopped running or didn't know what quite to do with itself. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a second, but for now, let's focus on these comparisons. So 5 is equal to 5, that's true. 5 is equal to 4, obviously not, so that is false. Other comparison operations that are commonly used in programming languages, they're almost all mathematical. 5 is less than 6. And they're exactly like we learned or you learned in basic math, yeah? 5 is less than 4? No. 5 is less than 4 minus 2. So here we have an order of operations issue. What's going to happen? Do we say 5 is less than 4 first and then subtract 2? Or do we say 4 minus 2 and then compare that to 5? So we're going to do 4 minus 2 first. Let's think about why that makes sense. What is the result of 5 less than 4? A Boolean. What is a Boolean minus a number? Nothing. It doesn't make any sense, right? And so we have an order of operations that is expressed in the programming language, but also really when you do math, even if you don't see it explicitly, where additions, algebraic operations happen before comparison operations. Yeah?
Try true minus 5 or true minus 5.
Well, we're not going to get into weird coercion yet. So unfortunately, true minus 4. that is deeply disturbing. So this is what you would what I would call a poor design decision in JavaScript on Brandon Eich's part. JavaScript will automatically try to coerce, that is a technical term, hold on a sec, coerce values or data if it doesn't think it's the right type into some other type that makes sense for the operation you're trying to perform. This gets incredibly confusing. Coercion in JavaScript is just a bizarre topic that was a mistake from the beginning and shouldn't be done. Be careful what kinds of data you're dealing with when you perform operations on it. That's the best thing to say. Yes?
So at this point, since true is 1 and false is 0, it goes ahead and converts true to 1.
That's right.
Minus 5 from it.
That's right. And so you get -4.
It's a Boolean into an
So it turns a Boolean into a number and then performs the operation. JavaScript is just doing that underneath the hood. This will lead to bugs in your program, unfortunately.
So it doesn't just kick you back in error.
Doesn't just kick you back in error. JavaScript is also what is known as a sort of loosely typed language. The type system is pretty flexible. You can do strange things to it. Some people really like loosely typed languages. This is heavily theoretical. There are also strongly typed languages such as Java. If you try to subtract a number from a Boolean in Java, Java breaks. Java goes, no, I cannot do that. That's probably the right response, because you're probably making a mistake if you do that. And the type system, which manages the data types for you, we learned numbers, strings, Booleans, and so on, checks that when you compile your program, and then throws an error and stops compiling your program. Yeah, JavaScript is not compiled. We can learn more about that later, and it is loosely typed. So we don't. Not only do we not see that we made a mistake when we wrote our program will just keep doing weird things while it's running. Yeah, which is problematic. We can compare. There are other comparisons like greater than and less than. They look exactly what you think they'd look like. So less than or equals and greater than or equals. We can compare other values. So obviously we can compare true to true. True, that's surely true. True, so what we would expect. And we can compare strings as well. So if we put in quotes Philip equals Philip, that is true. Is Philip equal to Matthew? Understandably false. I'm better than him. Hopefully none of you are Matthew. I'm not referring to you.
I am.
Oh. So greater than, less than, it's, you know, it's all a joke. Is Philip equal to Philip in capital letters? No. String equality in JavaScript is case sensitive. That's a technical term. It pays attention to case. It's not really that it's case sensitive, it's really that strings are actually numbers under the hood, and JavaScript is comparing a bunch of numbers to one another. The letter P is represented by a number in what's called ASCII underneath the hood, and the capital letter P is a different number. So it's actually comparing these numbers one by one and saying that they're not the same. Which is why we can do something even stranger. Is Philip less than Q? You probably never really want to do this, but that is true. Okay, let me show you some more examples and see if you can figure out why. No. Okay. Is Philip less than Philib? So my name ending with a B at the end. No. Is Philib less than or Philip less than Philic? True. So what's going on? Hold on, you probably already know. I want people to reason it out. Yeah.
Q's farther down the alphabet.
Yeah, Q's farther down the alphabet, right? But importantly, strings look one by one at each other, and if that first letter is automatically different, then the comparison stops. Especially for less than and greater than, anyways. For equality, it's going to have to check the whole thing. But here it goes, P is less than Q. Yes, it is. I'm done. I don't need to look at the rest of the string. Here it goes, P is greater than Q. Yes, it is. I'm finished. Right? So like I could do something like Philip and Q A or whatever. That's still going to be false because P is not greater than Q. Right? In this case, it looks at each one of these things individually and sees that they're equal, so it doesn't know if it's less than or not, and finally hits the end and goes, wait, P is not less than B, so false, right? further down the alphabet. And I don't remember what order capitals are in. We can find out, I suppose. Is lowercase a smaller than uppercase a? False. So capital letters have a lower numeric value, apparently. Okay. But that's more, trivia. Does that make sense? So this is not too bad. We have data. Data has a type, and as we'll see, data has a value. It is the number 42. It is the string Philip, right? It is the Boolean false. So we want to be aware of that. When we and then out of these data, we have expressions. So and oftentimes expressions will be operations, so like mathematical operations or Boolean operations. Yeah, we'll compare things or we'll add things and subtract things. Expressions have a result. The result is a Boolean, another string, another number, whatever. Right now, we are losing these results when we finish typing them into Node. They just disappear forever. They're gone. Usually, we are going to want to hold on to the result of some operation and do something with it later on. To do that, we need variables. So another basic building block of programming languages. Remember basic algebra. Hopefully it was not a terrible time. Basic algebra is not too bad. Calculus and linear algebra are considerably worse. Ask Shelby over there. Just finished Calc 3 and circuits. Was that right? Calc 4 and circuits, something like that. Designing circuits required a whole bunch of calculus?
Yeah, linear.
Linear. Okay, there we go.
Linear stuff.
So we know what algebra looks like. We get something like 3x plus 4, right? This is algebra. X is a variable in algebra. This is literally no different in computer programming. This is why mathematics is so good for understanding how programs work. X is a variable. This statement does not evaluate to anything at this point because X does not have a value. Yeah, we need to give X a value for this to make sense. So I could say, let's let X equal 3. Then what is the result of this statement? We can be a little bit more explicit. This is really 3, man, my writing's awful. 3 times X, right? And so when I say X equals 3, then I replace X with the number 3. I let 3 stand in for it, and I say 3 times 3 is 9, plus 4 is 13, right? But a variable's value, so we say 3 is its value, the value can change. I could say, okay, now let X equal 1. And then I want to place 1 in here and perform the result of this expression. So 3 times 1 is 3, plus 4 is 7, right? It is no different in a programming language. We are going to have variables. We can assign values to variables. That is to say, we can assign data to variables. And then at that point, our variable has a value, and we can say that it has a type and it has some piece of data, and then we can do things with that variable. Yeah? There are a whole bunch of technical terms in there, like assignment and evaluate and values and so on, and we're going to go over the details. In JavaScript, we just give a variable a name. Yeah? So like X is the name of a variable. That is a legal name for a variable in JavaScript. So to declare a variable, we're going to say declare it when I say, hey, I'm saying this thing is a variable. Let me use it as a variable later on. We say var, V-A-R for variable, and then the name of the variable, and then a semicolon. So var space X. We have just declared a variable. That is the first thing that we need to do every time we want to use a variable in our program. Declare it. Technical term. Var X. Node evaluates that, and the result of evaluating the declaration var X semicolon is undefined. We will learn in a moment that that is because this is a statement, not quite an expression, a little more complex, and the result of evaluating most statements in Node is undefined, or in JavaScript, really. We can name variables whatever we want, and in fact, we should give them better names than X. One of the best practices you can learn in programming is to give your variables descriptive names. Let your code self-document. Your code should tell you what it's doing. If I say var X and then do stuff with it, I have no idea what X is. But if I say var my name, I know I'm talking about my name. Or if I say var my dog, I know I'm talking about my dog. Or if I say var, oop, L is not defined, not my age. So let's give good names to our variables. We can use letters, both uppercase and lowercase. They are different from one another. And we can use numbers as well. So I can say var. That's a legitimate variable. Yeah. You cannot start a variable with a number in JavaScript. So I could say var x1, but I cannot say var 1x. JavaScript does not know what I've asked it to do here and is saying give me more information. So I Control-C out of that. There are some other special symbols you can use for variable names in JavaScript, such as the $ and the underscore. Let's not worry about that right now. Stick to numbers and letters. And remember, var age, lowercase, is not the same as var uppercase. By convention, so the idiom in JavaScript is to begin your variables with a lowercase letter, so var I, and then any other words in that variable, you give them uppercase letters. So my age is, or whatever. That's convention. In other programming languages, you'll see underscores used instead, or other combinations like a dash or something. Different programming languages have different idioms, just like human languages. JavaScript is normally done like this. So that's how we're going to see it in class. And that's how I encourage you to do it as well. This is called camel casing. I guess the uppercase letters are like humps on a camel or something. So if you haven't done so already, you might declare those variables inside of Node. I've written those on, if you're following along. Otherwise, you can just watch and it's okay. When I declare, or now that I've got variables, so I have this age variable, I've not assigned anything to age. Age does not have a value. It's like I've got x over here, but I haven't set anything to x. So JavaScript tells me that that is undefined. Undefined is a type of data in JavaScript. JavaScript understands what undefined is. If I type undefined into the console, JavaScript goes, okay, undefined. It doesn't give me an error. It says undefined. This is like a number or a string or a Boolean. This is a fourth type of data. The only value that undefined has is undefined, right? So it's really easy. It's a way for JavaScript to say, I don't know. Yeah, you haven't told me yet. And that's okay. It's not an error. It's like waiting. Yeah? So now that I have this variable, age, I can assign the result of an expression to it. We already know that a number by itself is an expression. So I can assign a number to a variable with the equal sign. Age equals 32. This is different than the equality, which uses two equal signs, right? Yes?
Are semicolons recommended in JavaScript?
We will learn about how semicolons come into play once we talk about statements. So yes. So you'll see that I can do age equals 32, and that works. And the result back is 32, which means that this is really an expression. Or I can say age equals 32 and give it a semicolon on the end. That turns it into a statement, which we'll learn about in a moment, whose result is also 32. So those are slightly different and can lead to some confusion, which we'll discuss further on. So now my age is equal to 32. So if I just type age at the console, JavaScript or Node evaluates the variable age into the value that it has. Yeah, I think evaluates is a perfect word there. It is actually turning it into its piece of data or its value. Its value is 32, so that's what that results in. I can change the value of this variable. So now I can say age equals 45. And now the age is 45. I just changed the value of this variable. I just changed the piece of data that it is holding on to. And I can see that it is now 45. In programming lingo, this means that variables in JavaScript are mutable, which can lead to massive problems and is often responsible for bugs in code. You'll change your variable and then use it for something else without realizing that you changed your variable. Yes. Oh, we got two here. Back there? I saw three. Brent first. Brent had his hand up.
Is there a way to follow what variables it has stored?
There might very well be a way to see the environment. I don't know what it is. It's a good question, though. Other questions? So we're moving forward. Yes.
Access modifiers. That's what I was about to ask. Can't you protect your variables with access modifiers so that way you can't change?
No, not in JavaScript.
Really?
Not on just naked variables. So, but let's not worry about that. That's a little more advanced. Up here, yes.
With var, is that or like a node? If you can a note, in other words, if I can just define a variable by listing it, say my variable is name, and that's my variable. I define that with the equal sign. Is it necessary to then do var
So we have to. So that's a great question. So in JavaScript, let's say I have a variable that I'm not. So the word there is declaring, right? Not assigning yet. Assigning is different. That's when I actually give it a value. When I declare a variable, I'm saying var some name, right? What if I just did something by itself? So what if I said another thing? I get an error. This is good. Yeah. This variable has not been declared yet. JavaScript is going, I don't know what you're talking about. I can't use that. So we need to use var space and that. You'll see in a browser, that is different. In a browser, you can just use a variable name without declaring it first. In my mind, that is another one of JavaScript's defects, that you don't have to declare variables before you use them, that you can do it both ways. Newer versions of JavaScript will require variable declaration, I believe. Maiwo might actually know more about that than me. Yeah, I think they're changing that.
So for our purposes,
always declare your variable with var space and then the name. That's right. And Anoop.
I'm good, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, for Brett's question, in Chrome in the DevTools, you can actually set it to debug, and you can see all.
And you can see all those. Oh yeah, yeah. You can see globals. There should be a way to do that in Node. Because in the browser you have the window object, which contains a whole bunch of stuff. Looks like you got the global object. So here's an answer to your question. So there is a variable that has already been defined for me in Node. The variable's name is global. Global has a bunch of stuff associated with it, including everything in my environment, which includes all of the variables that I've defined, like my name, my dog, age, alive in 2014, and so on. So you can actually use global to do that. I didn't know that. Cool. In a browser, that's window. Okay, so we've seen that we've got variables. We can declare variables, and we can assign values to variables, right? Or we can assign the results of expressions to variables. Well, I can take a variable and assign the result of a more complex expression to it, like 5 is now 16. So JavaScript, again, we see order of precedence, or order of operations, or precedence here, is doing everything over here first, and then assigning it to age, right? So I'm taking my expressions, JavaScript Node is evaluating them, giving me a result, and storing that result inside the variable. Often, we will want to declare a variable and assign a value to it, assign a bit of data to it at the same time. So I could do var age, declare my variable, and then I could say age equals 32, which is how old I am, by the way. So I'll be 33 in like 2 weeks. So age, and then assign it. But I could do all that in one motion. I could say var age equals 32, semicolon. That is a legitimate statement in JavaScript. I'm declaring a variable and assigning a value to it in one spell swoop. And the result of that is undefined. But I now have an age. My age is 32. I'm starting to get white hairs.
Why is the result undefined?
Actually, that is coming up. So in JavaScript, and that's the very next thing. So it's a good question. In JavaScript, in all programming languages, and he mentions this in Eloquent, we have expressions and we have statements. Yeah, expressions are sort of like the fundamental syntactic construct of a programming language. So we start out with 32. 32 by itself is an expression. So when I'm talking about things like nouns and verbs and adjectives, the equivalent of that for a programming language. Expressions are like the nouns and verbs by themselves. Actually, think of expressions as like, part of a sentence, but not a whole sentence. Yeah, these things by themselves are nouns. I could have, I don't want to carry them